This is the Authentic Dating series brought to you by Ahmad and David,
where we explore what it takes to have a dating life you're excited about.
Hey guys, I'm David.
I'm Ahmad.
And this is the Authentic Dating series.
So in this episode, we're going to do one special one for the ladies and gentlemen
in relationships.
We've done, it was actually Dave's idea, surprisingly, because he's single. I say surprisingly, yeah, because he's single. And he was like, hey, we should do an episode for people in relationships.
Yeah, because, there's like loads of people in relationships. You want your relationships to be better, make relationships better again.
Make them great again. Yeah,
shit. Just stop recording.
Yeah, make them great again.
Let's make relationships great again.
It's just, we've both been in and out of relationships.
You in, me out.
Me, I'm currently in. Dave's currently out, shaking it all about. Do the hokey pokey. That's
turn around.
But you know what? Actually, it was good. It was a good one because when you first brought it up, I was like, yeah, okay, we can do this. But what are we going to talk about? And then, it was like, well, what are the issues that arise in long-term relationships? And we do find, actually, that time and time again, time in, time out, in and out, shake it all about, there are regular issues that arise. In fact, we came up with 5 core issues that we see.
I'm almost guarantee you, if you're in a relationship now, or you've been in a relationship at some point in your life, or you wish to be in a relationship at some point in your life, I reckon that's probably most of our listeners, you've either had this, having this, or going to have one of these.
Yeah, and it's, some of it is, and we're not trying to be negative on relationships because I'm in one.
They're terrible. Avoid them.
Yeah, I'm in one. It's actually just something that is, I guess, it's just quite common across the board. So yeah, we'll get straight into it. And number 1 on the list is arguments. And I put down arguments originally, but then really what I saw was arguments by and large are miscommunications.
Yeah. There's somewhere in that. Someone has said something or done something, and that thing that was said or done has taken in a way that wasn't the intention of the thing that was said or done.
Yeah, a complete disparity between 2 points of view, essentially.
Can you give me an example, Ahmad? Something that you're currently dealing with?
Well, there's nothing I can think of. I mean, there's some other points that I'm currently dealing with that come up later. But yeah, so an argument could be as simple as, I'm thinking of David said about using the drill earlier, but in the previous episode. But no, someone said, could you do this? Could you pick out the washing or put it to dry? And then you didn't do that, and then it turns into an argument, and then there you go.
You're in an argument.
You have an argument. More sort of dramatic. It could be disagreements between family members and in couples and stuff, and that causes contention and stress. So arguments in any form are some form of I don't keep thinking disparity, but that's not the word. But it's more like it's a disagreement essentially it's a disagreement on the smaller side of the drama scale. Arguments are disagreements, like people not accepting, plus the emotional upset that comes with it, the emotional tension that makes it more and so from the small scale, like I said about the washing, which can be small scale to me but massive to someone else, to more heartfelt issues, like family issues and stuff like that. Like what's going on? It's the disagreement plus the emotional attachment to what's happening in the moment. And so what we see and how we deal with arguments in general, and I know this is true for myself and for David, is we've learned over time is listening. Stop. Basically, it's like a bit like the fire drill. If everyone remembers back in school, stop, drop, and roll. it's like when you're on fire, stop, drop, and roll. Stop, drop, and roll.
Stop, drop, and roll.
And you know what? Actually, this is actually something that David and I both know. It's called It's a technique called conflict with integrity.
Yeah.
And it's literally like a stop, drop, and roll, right?
Yeah.
And the way that it works is, first and foremost, the first bit's probably the hardest. And the first bit is you have to be able to recognize that you have an issue, that you have you have a charge, an emotional charge, that you're upset.
An annoyance.
Yeah, you have to be able to recognize that you're annoyed. Because if the train has left the station, it's too late. You have to recognize before the anger train has left. And then when you recognize, you acknowledge what that is, right? You go, okay, I'm annoyed. I acknowledge that I'm annoyed. And then you acknowledge the second step is acknowledging what is it you want to do about that, right? And
so let's give the listeners a little example. Like, say for instance, I'm going to give devil's advocate here with my horns. You know, for instance, you, Ahmad, you find out that your girlfriend has been texting a man flirtatiously, and you had no knowledge as you found out in some way.
I'm glad I had no knowledge to begin with.
And now you feel annoyed. You know, you're angry, you're feeling hurt, you're feeling betrayed. How do we go through the process using that example?
Normally I don't like dealing with hypothetical situations, and the reason being is because in the moment, the emotion and everything that is being experienced is very unique to that moment. But just for this example, we shall use it because I feel like I can. So what would I do? So the first thing is noticing, that I think I'd be a bit more than annoyed. I'd be fucking livid.
Seething.
Yeah. So it would be to acknowledge that that's the case, right? And this is, as I'm saying this, I'm recognizing that this is obviously if I was doing this, I'm be acting in a very responsible way here, a very mature way of dealing with things. And by mature, I mean that I've experienced an emotional reaction to something, and my first instinct is not to just respond and react like straight away,
out and throw the phone immediately. Or something.
Whereas for most people, they just go fucking berserk, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just acknowledging that as well. I'm not suggesting that this is a classic case for anyone. I don't know why Dave has brought this one to the table. Perhaps something for a friend who's thinking. But
there's no comment.
Yeah, no, I'm just messing. But so the first thing is to acknowledge. Okay, cool. All right, so this has happened. I'm feeling fucking like absolutely livid, right? So then the second stage is to then acknowledge in truth, honesty, if this is how I'm feeling, what do I want to do? What's the action that I want to naturally take? Acknowledging the natural action that I want to take, not taking it, but just acknowledging it. So in this case, I might want to go and find this guy and punch him in the face.
Yeah.
I might want to get really upset and shout at her.
Yeah.
At my hypothetically cheating girlfriend at this point, or not cheating, but hypothetically messaging. Flirtatious at this point. And just acknowledging and acknowledging the action, right? And anyone else out there can pretty much resonate that their response. So you could follow me on this, right?
Yeah.
You'll be upset, guaranteed. Anyone out there who's saying they wouldn't be upset, well, fair enough. But for me, I'd be upset, and guaranteed I'd be angry, and my action would follow suit. So then the third thing is whatever that second action was, don't do that. It's a very important step.
I like that step. It's for the listeners, it's a really important part of this process is to go, I want to rip someone's head off. Don't do that.
No,
and you can use this whole process for work. You can use it every aspect of your life, basically, whenever you have some sort of annoyance or anger or whatever, a strong emotion towards something negatively, usually.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this isn't just for cheating, flirtatious text messages. It's for any, as Dave said, any scenario. So then I acknowledge like I said. So step one, acknowledge the upset. Step two, acknowledge the action that I want to take. Step three, don't do that action. Step four, and there's only a couple more steps left, guys, so don't worry. Step four is essentially like put myself in a position of love. Like an integrity. And what I mean by that is step back from those emotions, those feelings that I'm feeling, and ask myself, what is a loving way to deal with this situation? And this is the integrity part. When I mentioned the title of this process is called Conflict with Integrity. And the integrity is, is it really the best way for you or any person involved to go and rip someone's head off, as David so eloquently suggested it could be the action.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Is that really the best way? Is that really the best outcome in this scenario? Or is there a more loving way? And this is where I was saying, it's not really useful to use theoretical scenarios because I'm not in that situation right now. So I can't actually go, right, okay, this is what I get and give you guys an accurate description of like, now, how am I going to deal with this in a loving way? But more honestly, like, more just from my own experience, not honestly, what's obvious to me in this scenario is, let's say, okay, I was in a scenario and I'm in this loving space. Like, obviously, okay, I'll probably still be upset. But my main thing would be to have a conversation with my girlfriend openly about it and say, look, this is what, I don't know how I've discovered this. Again, David's scenarios, it begs many questions how I discovered the text messages. There's a lot more detail that hasn't been given to me, but nonetheless, having a conversation. And, from there, moving forward from there. So I think it was just 4 steps. I think I've just covered there. But essentially, that's conflict with integrity. So just to recap, that was number 1. Firstly, the hardest part is acknowledging, maybe the second hardest, acknowledging that there is, there was an upset, there's a charge, an emotional charge. 2, acknowledging the action that you want to do in alignment with that charge. 3, not doing that. That's probably the hardest part, actually. So not doing that. But stepping back from the situation and going, okay, this is what's happened and this is not the best course of action. 4, asking myself, what is the most loving way to deal with this scenario? And then 5, do that. Do the integrity part. So that would be that.
And that's an incredibly useful process you can go through, and the more you do it, the faster you can do it, and the more you're able to catch yourselves in these situations and make use of it.
Well, the main thing here as well, just to recap on that, is it's an emotional concept, and when you're dealing with something from a negative emotion and you're really angry and whatnot, like the way you respond to something is going to be from that space. Whereas opposed if you're able to take a moment and switch that emotion, not necessarily to like a positive one, I'm not suggesting that, but rather ask yourself, like even with your logical mind, like what is the most integral way, loving way of dealing with this, and do that. The outcome is going to be better than if you go and punch someone in the face and end up in jail. So for example. So
that's one of the solutions for kind of arguments, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was it. That was just point 1.
And I guess one of the other things is listening in these kind of arguments, and going back to what Ahmad said, is kind of not reacting from a place of anger and annoyance. It's like actually being calm and listening to someone, because a lot of the time within arguments is just a miscommunication. And if you kind of really listen, and you listen from a place of kind of compassion, you will often hear that there's been a miscommunication, and you'll be able to identify the miscommunication and just say, oh, actually, I thought you meant that. Oh, well, actually, the text messages were, my friend was selling them from my phone because she doesn't have a phone, You know what I mean?
Well, see, that's the thing, and like just to add to that, listening, because again, you could be reacting as there you go. You could be reacting as Dave said, it's actually not what you thought it was.
Yeah.
And this is where, again, the whole conflict with integrity process can really help to stop you from looking like a fool.
Yeah.
Either way. So, good one.
Point
1 done. Number 2, we find is a major one. Did you want to hit this one?
Yeah, the major thing here is a lot of people's issues in relationship is there's just the pure difference between men and women, and how men are, kind of typically masculine, and kind of masculine energy of being around doing and solving and fixing and success. Whereas women traditionally coming from the feminine energetically are more about, expressing emotion and being loving and nurturing and caring.
Yeah. And the problem that often arises that in relationships, especially after you've been together for some time, is so often we just want to fix things as men. Like we get so much into our man side of things.
Yeah.
And there is a sort of I think earlier on in a relationship, it's easy to kind of give the other person more space, and because you don't really know them. Because
what it is, the picture you have of them has more blanks, and you allow them to fill those in. But once they filled them in, you have a picture of them, and it's a limited picture. You painted of them how they are, and then they start doing things, and anything they do that's like not in alignment of the picture you've already painted can cause you some sort of aggro or grief.
Yeah, and as we'll say, with that time, you become more familiar as well with them, and you kind of relax more.
And you start to really kind of let your true self start to come out as well.
Yeah. So it's important, I feel like what we're saying here is like, especially one of the key things is understanding that there are differences between men and women and how we think. like there's such a common one where like men are always trying to fix things and women just want to talk about things.
Yeah.
And honestly speaking, like I genuinely, even though we've heard this in comedies, in movies, on stand-up comedians will talk about this. Like, for our whole lives, we've heard about how men love to fix things and women just want to talk. And yet, even for me in my relationship, I find myself in a position where I'm trying to fix something and my girlfriend just wants to talk about it.
It's very true. And I'm not saying it's true for all men, because I know, in this day, not just this day and age, men come from a very wide variety of cultures and places, and they grow up differently. Like I've had it. I remember not too long ago, actually, a situation with a guy I was seeing where I was saying to her, I was like, oh, I'm feeling like this, and blah, blah, blah. And she completely started going into fixing. And she was like, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. And I just stopped and went, oh no, I didn't want a solution. I just wanted to tell you how I was feeling. And she was like, oh, I see. And it's like, but because energetically at that moment, I was very much in my feminine. I just wanted to complain and moan. I'm not saying that women want to complain and moan. I just wanted
I was very much in my feminine. I just wanted to complain and moan. That is on record.
I just wanted to communicate how I was feeling.
Oh, okay. Is that what you meant by your feminine? Your emotional side?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I was just communicating how I was feeling, and she completely went into the masculine and just tried to fix my problems, which was really sweet and lovely. Like I really there was a lot of care and love in that. But I didn't get annoyed. I just kind of said, oh, that's not actually what I want.
Yeah.
And I communicated that.
Yeah. And I think this is, the secondary point to this would be the same as the secondary point for the first point, was that listening is the key factor. And I did see something about this recently from someone on Instagram, like before offering advice, like there was like 5 questions you should ask. I can't remember what they all were, right? But like, is it that's not that doesn't matter.
One of them was definitely in there asking the question, do you want advice?
Yeah. But see that one I remember, but that one was the last one. So you ask all these questions like, how are you? What happened? All these things. And then finally you say, would you like some advice on that?
Yeah.
You still have to, not saying ask these questions, then give advice. Always actually asking, does this person want advice? And I'm laughing because actually when we were making these notes, I was saying to David, well, I've never met a woman that actually wanted advice, like actually like in the moment, like unless they've asked it, like what I mean by that is I never met a woman that has actually wanted the advice. And if they wanted it, they would have asked for it first. They would have said, I want some advice. Yeah. Never like wanted advice and was just waiting for a man to give it. Yeah. Often they want to express and it's true. It's just for in my experience rather, that for women they really are in a space that there is an emotional charge going through it, and they just want to let that pass through. And actually, now that I think about that, right, how powerful was that really? As men, we're always like, oh, well, we need a solution to something. Women are just like, nah, I'm cool. I'll just deal with the emotions.
Yeah.
And then I'm fine.
And go to our previous episode, episode 18, where we talk about dealing with emotions. Men, it's like, as men, we'd be so much better off if we did a lot more of that, just venting how we felt, right? And I'm not saying, again, reiterating again that this isn't the only thing. Women don't always just want to talk about how they feel, and men don't always want to fix things. But this is them in their kind of relating energies. The other thing I'd say on this point, the difference between men and women is the differences are vast. Like you've got the whole thing about men retreating to their cave when they want quiet and peace. What else is there remember the book, Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus? Have you read that? It was a long time ago I read this book. No, I don't think I did. Yeah, and it just talks about a lot of the differences between men and women. And, if you're in a relationship, I highly recommend the two of you reading it, because it's really eye-opening to see how true a lot of it is.
And I mean, the final thing I want to say on this point is something I remember hearing some years ago now, and it's just that if women let men be men and men let women be women, there wouldn't be any dramas. It's just this whole thing of like we often refer to each other, or relate to each other rather. We often relate to each other as if women are just like us, like men, and men are just. And then in doing so, we create a lot of issues and drama because obviously that's not how it is. And then we're trying to cajole and force someone into a box that's not them.
Yeah.
Whereas if we just it's a bit like, we don't try and we don't try and make cats be dogs, and we don't try and make dogs be cats. You know, like I mean, I guess some people try, but I
did see a cat on a lead the other day in a park.
Yeah, I mean, some cats can do that, right? But it's not quite making that a dog. But my point is, it's like, you know, they have a nature. And it's not even about respect here. It's just about recognizing,
letting them be that nature.
Yeah, it's just recognizing the nature rather than moaning and complaining about it and finding fault with that. That was a really powerful insight. I think I just learned something there.
Yeah, I think when I re-listen to this and edit it, I'll be getting something too.
Yeah,
maybe
cool.
I'll be in a relationship by then.
Maybe you'll remove that bit you said about women earlier.
Maybe. God, if I remove that, then I have to remove this bit too.
Yeah. I knew that.
Okay, so the next one, point 3, is aligning on life, relationship goals and values.
So this one is about, and this is very important, and I feel this is, especially when we're young, it's just something we're not aware of. We're not necessarily taught this, but as you get older, you recognize this in relationships, that a lot of people can get into a relationship just purely on attraction basis, and they pay no heed to the values that each other have, and what goals each other have for their life, and how they want to live. And one of the key values that people often overlook that causes a lot of problems, and I've been hearing a lot about this recently, is money. And you wouldn't think it necessarily, because a lot of people have very romantic ideas about what's possible, but in reality, and we are in reality. So in reality, it's just the differences can again cause such a tension, and it's like what we were saying about it's akin to the differences between men and women, like in their character and their personalities and their nature. So and this money is one of them, but it's a huge one. And when I say money, I'm talking about like how people like to spend, their views on saving, their views on lifestyle.
And it doesn't always have to be about one of you being wealthy and one of you not being wealthy, because often it can work perfectly because you have similar values about what you want to do with money or how you feel about money. But it's when you have very different values about how you want to spend your money. For instance, I'm trying to think of something for myself that I've experienced in a relationship. I'll give an example of, say one of you loves to travel and you happily spend, all your kind of spare cash every year on traveling, going to new countries and exploring. If the other person in the relationship wants to spend a lot of spare money on personal goods, like maybe, Drugs? Okay, drugs. We're going there. So if one of you want to spend...
Sorry, man. I was just looking at your face and I was half right in there.
So that doesn't work. So if one of you wants to spend all your money on travel and the other person wants to spend all the money on like doing up the house, right? So the guy in the relationship wants to spend all the money on doing up the house and the woman wants to spend all the money on traveling. You're going to have a lot of friction in your relationship because your monetary values are at odds with each other constantly. And until you can find an aligned place, you're always going to have issues with how you're feeling and how you want to be kind of spending your money.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to what you're saying, because I had a lot of that in my last relationship. And I did have a romantic idea about it. It can work. And I'm not saying that was the only issue that we had, but it was definitely something that I can say, like, viscerally, it bothered me to the core, because I was very relaxed. Like I do have a system around how I save money.
Oh yeah.
So then, like my ex-partner, she was, I guess, a bit more in a scarcity mentality around money. And sure, she had a different lifestyle and whatnot. So that's what caused it. So I'm not kind of, judging that. But the issue then between us was I felt uncomfortable if I was to go out and buy something. I did feel uncomfortable. There's an exact story. I was just telling you. There's an exact story about when I bought some trainers and I was really excited about them and I showed her them and then she was like, I bet they were fucking expensive. And then I was like, oh shit. And then like a little boy, I went to the bathroom and looked at them in the mirror and then eventually I was sitting them back.
So it really had an impact on you there.
Well, in general, just because like I say, for me as a man, just living a certain way, I do feel I'm quite responsible. I can be irresponsible at times, but I am quite responsible with my money, especially. So to have that sort of judgment and restriction on my being, on my how I like to live, of course, it causes friction.
And this was your own money, right? This wasn't money that was impacting her.
Oh yeah, no, I took it from her purse. I'm joking. It was my own money. Yeah. So So then I think the main thing here is going back to what I was saying earlier about, people who, especially when we're younger, falling into a relationship on the basis of, oh, this woman's so attractive, or this is what I need in my life because it completes me in a certain way, rather than actually looking at a long-term relationship for what it logically actually is, which is a long-term partnership.
Yeah.
And in any sort of long-term partnership, and I'm using the word business very loosely, but it is like a business in the sense that you don't get into someone, you get into someone.
You get into someone sometimes.
Sometimes it's okay. You can get into someone. You don't get it. But you don't get into a business partnership with someone unless you align on their values. You believe in the same work ethic, in the same way of doing things,
ways of working, where you want the business to go.
Yeah. And in a partnership, it's a similar vibe. It's like you want to build a partnership with someone where you know that you can be who you are within reason, and they can be who they are, and you support each other. And that there are some core elements and values. Money values is one of them, but values in general about how you like to live.
Yeah.
A very important one is children. Do they want to have children?
Yeah.
How will they raise children?
Yeah.
And again, these are often things that people, if you're very young, fair enough, but they just don't think about. And it can cause a lot of issues.
But what I say here is your values don't have to be exactly the same. You can have different values, and that can completely work in many areas of your life, right? There's nothing to say that your values of your partner have to be exactly the same, but you have to be able to be supporting of each other's values. And there needs to be some alignment. You don't have to be the same, and you can be different and still be aligned. Yeah,
and I think the important thing there, though, is, and this is where a lot of people trip up, and I know I'm speaking mostly for myself here, is actually, and we've both learned this over time, is being very honest from the beginning.
Yeah.
Not kind of waiting and then go, oh, by the way, it's later on, by the way, I like sex clubs.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would love to go.
It's best to say that on the first date, I find.
Yeah, do you? Yeah. No.
Just a friend told me once.
Yeah, well, I've seen you doing it, and it seems to work for you very well. At sex clubs. Let's just have a drink in here. No. But yeah, but that we joke, right? But that is something that a lot of people be like, oh, I shouldn't talk about this, or I shouldn't say that, and then later on, oh, by the way, and then the other person's like, well, hang on, who the fuck's this person?
Yeah,
I've been. I
thought this guy was a certain way. I thought he was about living life a certain way, and actually, it turns out he likes to sit at home every day, eat pizza, and get fat.
And again, that's not too uncommon. Like with people, it's but that's less of a value. That's more of a, I don't know, lifestyle choice, it seems, that they hide. So yeah, being honest, and again, it goes, this one, another key thing here, and we keep mentioning it, communication, but with communication, honesty, speaking openly, and it seems like it's a harder thing to do than we're making out here.
So our next point is
talking about sex clubs.
Is about point 4, sorry, here, that the issues in relationship is passion and sex, which we feel really comes down to attraction, and that after a while, you've been in a relationship for a couple of years, and you get kind of into the kind of day-to-day life. You see each other every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday morning or something, and after a while,
every day,
yeah, and you stop making an effort to have sex, or it becomes a bit of a chore, it becomes a bit dull and boring, or you don't find your partner so attractive, maybe they're not looking after themselves as much as they used to, maybe you're not looking after yourself as much as they used to, or it just might come down to that you just can't really be bothered anymore. It's not that exciting as it was once before. And this is pretty common, right? I think that I've definitely experienced this in my past relationships, and I think you probably have as well. And it's a serious problem for a lot of people. I still see there's a lot of sexless relationships around where people just completely stop having sex, or it becomes once every couple of months or so.
So the first thing what comes to my mind, especially in my experience, is there is a change often. Initially when we're first getting to know someone, there is this whole excitement in the getting to know them, and part of that is the sex.
Yeah,
it's
new, the newness of it all.
It's all new. But then when there's more familiarity and also more certainty. It's almost part of a certainty game as well. When you're uncertain whether you're going to see them again, it's I'll get all the sex that I can. But then when it's a bit more certain, you're sex will be coming soon.
It's gonna come later.
Yeah, it's 3 meals a day.
Yeah, we can have sex tomorrow. Why am I going to have sex now?
Oh, lunchtime sex.
But the problem is that that's what doesn't happen. Start having lunch instead of having sex.
So yeah. And so what I'm saying is, firstly, it's really important to notice that in any relationship that things do change. And I can only speak about relationships up to a certain point. Like I haven't, there are people, who may be listening who've been married for like 20, 30, 40 years, like, and that's a way longer relationship than we've ever experienced. Right. But what is obvious is that, life happens, shit happens. In general, our hormones are this, are that, and this. Like, things change, and it's good to recognize that. The second thing that comes to my mind is something which we haven't mentioned yet across the board, which is very important in any relationship, is effort.
Yeah. And this is like when we start getting into the solution for this problem, right? One of it is actually making some effort to, whether it be to try and look nice, like make an effort to go, okay, my partner's coming home. And it's just going to be me and them at home for the evening. Multiple partners.
Just me and them. As expected.
And, making an effort and thinking, I'm going to put something sexy on. And this is not just for the ladies listening, for the guys as well, Put on your thong. And I'm not talking about flip-flops out here, and try and look sexy for your wife or your girlfriend, whatever it's like. Make an effort instead of always just kind of like throwing on your jogging bottoms and like rolling, like crawling out of the house or something. It's like, make the effort to look nice. And it's just, what happens is that people stop making the effort to actually even initiate sex as well, right? It's like, it's 10 o'clock at night. I've got to wake up at 7, got to go to the gym. We'll do it tomorrow. And then tomorrow becomes tomorrow, which comes from tomorrow, and then before you know it, it's 6 months, and you don't even know how to have sex anymore.
Yeah, and actually on that point, I think there is something else that comes up, especially in the longer version, is communication. Again, it's like there is a sense of values in there as well, but the communication because I've been in a couple of relationships where at some point the girl says to me that she doesn't want to have sex, like for whatever reason. It surprised me, bro. Dave has a surprised face, but I was just as surprised as anyone. Like, I was like, oh shit, like this is happening to me. Like, I've heard stories, and this can happen for any number of reasons. It could be stress, it could be literally attraction, it could be they've seen someone else it doesn't like, but I don't know, right? And in that moment, it's like, it's very daunting to be in that phase. And as a man, maybe sometimes we don't want to cause confrontation. We don't want to upset. We don't want to overstep our bounds.
Yeah.
There's, we
Or
want to be
perceived
respectful.
bounds.
We want to be respectful. This whole, respecting women as well. So it's really important, like, as a man, again, to be able to communicate honestly and openly. And I mean, this is a little bit different to this current point, but I have something that I like to live by, which is, if you always do what you did at the beginning, then there'll be no end. And it's not so simple to do, but for me, it's the vibe. It's the vibe of the situation, of keeping that essence alive, and essentially not just in sex, but also in your playfulness, in your relationship, in life. Yeah.
So that's one of the things you can really do, but also is like, I think this is a really simple thing. Something I got from my tantra class that I go to, is that what we do with sex is we just kind of tag it on the end of the day. You go to work, you meet up with some friends, you come home, you eat some food, and then at 10:30 at night, you and your partner get into bed and think, maybe we can have sex. But you've had a long day, you're tired, you've got stuff to do in the morning. Well, why don't you schedule sex into your week? Maybe on a Thursday night, you both make sure you come home at 7 o'clock, and then you jump into bed. You bring some takeaway, or you grab some sushi on the way home, or whatever it may be. But you schedule that time in to do that activity, because it's important to you. Activity, and make it sound like it's like some sort of football game or something. But actually scheduling it in and giving it the importance that it means to you. And I know that might be quite a difficult conversation to have with your partner, to go, okay, I'd like to schedule in weekly kind of, times when we have sex. And some people might be like, oh, that's a bit weird, blah, blah. But I'd say try it out. Like, I've met a couple of couples who did this, and they said it made a massive difference for them. It just made a huge difference to their sex life.
I think it's I initially would have that sort of reaction where it's because I'm still in a very spontaneous phase. But it is definitely something where I look at life as like I just said about the previous point around this, is like, it's normal for the relationship around sexually to change.
Yeah,
it's a very normal thing. So with that in mind, and like life in mind, like it's always about adapting and always about changing and doing what you can to make things work. So yeah, you know, if need be, then yeah, of course, like make something about it. And maybe it's not even necessarily something that, you know, both of you are aware of, that there's a schedule. You know, like I remember actually, I mean, this is going to sound really geeky for you, I suppose, but I remember there was a point in your life where you had a reminder in your phone to tell your girl that you loved her.
Yes, I did.
Dave built structure.
Structure. Because I knew, you know, in them days that I would quite easily not think about saying it, because it was just something that I was like, oh, well, I love her. Why do I need to tell her? And I put it in my diary, and I tell you what, it made a massive difference.
There you go.
Because I'd see it and I'd be like, it's time to do that thing. It's time. And obviously she didn't realize that it was part of my schedule. She didn't see that in my calendar. But it worked really well because it would seem spontaneous.
Every Tuesday morning. 9:10. 9:10? 9:10. Yeah, but it just gives you an idea, right? Like how, because I've been learning something again recently, and it's like everything in life you can essentially break down everything into its separate individual system. And with that in mind, like everything has a routine, has a certain structure. So yeah, why not?
Yeah, why not the sex? And I think one of the other points is, we do a lot of points to help you with this sex and passion stuff, people. So don't be like complaining and bleeding. We're not here to help you. And the next thing is like spicing things up. Now I can think of a story of a guy I knew, and what him and his wife did was to spice things up between the two of them. They used to have a date night, right? Like if you haven't got a date night, you need to get a fucking date night, right? Where once a month or once every 2 weeks, you go and do something outside the home, whatever it may be, and you organize it. Like each of you does it with a surprise or whatever. But what their date night, what was really interesting that they used to do was they would go to a hotel. She would book a room under her name alone, and then he would turn up at the hotel at the bar, see her at the bar, and chat her up.
That was a movie, bro.
That was a movie.
That was a great movie.
No. I knew a guy who did this.
Oh, okay.
Right, and it used to be this kind of whole playful thing of like, it was like a seduction. So he would kind of like, you know, try and pretend that he was seducing her, and it was just being playful and having that night. And I thought it was amazing and super cute. It's not something I've done.
I've seen the movie.
What happens in the movie?
I've seen a movie that has that. So it starts off that way.
Oh, okay.
I'll tell you in a second. Go finish your story.
Okay, cool. And yeah, and then obviously at the end of the night, he would go back to the room with her. I'm assuming that it always happened that way, unless he did something really bad and she didn't let him come back. He had to go home. His pickup line was shit. She went home with someone else. But I mean, like, you know, something like that could really add. You only do that once or twice in a year, but add that layer of kind of playfulness and fun and spicing things up. And I've even said, like, you know, you could attend you could go to swingers clubs. I've read a great book recently about swinging, which is really interesting. And yeah, there's things like other sex clubs in the UK to spice things up. You're not necessarily you might not be swinging with other people. You might just go to be in the space, be somewhere different in a different type of energy.
And I think just as a final point on this one, because we've got so many points, clearly we can do a separate episode on this one, I think. We will definitely revisit, guys, because we clearly have a lot more to say. What's obvious is that, but what just came to my mind, actually, as you were saying that about the sex club and stuff, is I bet there's a lot of untapped potential in every sexual relationship in regards to, again, communication and understanding what another person likes, what they don't. Like, we're like infinite, multi-dimensional, multifaceted beings, and so there's so much that we know, we don't know that we don't know, whatever. There's so much going on, so much color that, you know, I'm pretty sure every day of the week, you know, you can get a different suggestion.
Sexually, like, you know, you can literally go out and you could try all sorts. There's an intros, and there's like, you know, there's things like BDSM, there's kink, there's also like, there's something called shibari, which is this Japanese rope tying that they kind of tie in with BDSM, so people tie each other up, and it's like, you can go and do workshops on this stuff, you know. It's everywhere. If you really want to push the boundaries and try something new, and you don't have to like it, you might try it, might do a workshop for 2-3 hours and go, fuck, that shit's weird, I don't want to do that. Or you might be like, fuck, I fucking love that shit. Like, and then before you know it, you're on this whole journey with your partner into this new world of things to do.
So here's an interesting fact for most of us, is we don't actually know what we like. We don't know what we like, and we don't actually know how we like to be touched. We don't necessarily ask for that.
Yeah.
And so there's so much, like, even for ourselves, in like as men personally. But so if you're listening to this, you're thinking, yeah, actually, I don't really know. I kind of shied away from that topic. Then think about any woman that you're with, or you've been with, or you want to be with. Like, they're going to be in a similar boat.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, that could be a whole night or two for you and your partner, just talking about, you know, spending some time in bed talking about how you like to be touched, and like learning about each other all over again. Oh, God, we had a lot there, didn't we? So the last one, point 5, is spending time together. I feel like this is something that's definitely been a massive issue for me in my past relationships, where I've been super busy doing various things in my life, work, gym, playing football, like other hobbies, and where, you know, my kind of diary and my partner's diary just doesn't align. So it means that we're always kind of struggling to spend time together, and we're kind of always at odds. And it just means that, you know, this is a constant gripe. You know, it's a real one that will just keep happening again and again and again, where you're like, oh, we don't spend enough time together, you're always busy. And it can really turn into our first point, arguments, where, you know, you're just kind of going back and forth about it, and it comes up again and again and again in relationships.
Yes. Sorry, I was just making notes there. So, yeah, it's definitely, this is something that I feel, especially with when people get into relationships, and then they have, like, one of the things that gets overlooked, and I feel like we were saying this earlier today, we were in a meeting earlier today, and we were saying this, like, often people get into relationships, and either they are so in each other's lives that everything that they do is together. Or they tend to be like, they're together, but really they're two people leading separate lives. Yeah. Or there's a third option where, well, there's other options, but there's a third, like, simplified option where they're together, they're connected, but they are living their individual lives. And I think what everyone needs to recognize is that even if you're in a relationship, like, you are still an individual person who's now experiencing life in a relationship. Yeah. With a person that you've chosen to, well, hopefully that you've chosen to spend it with. And
if you've not chosen them, then there's phone lines you can call.
Well, there are arranged marriages. So, shall I wait for your hate mail for David? Please send that to David at AuthenticDatingSeries.com. No, David's been coming out with the fire comments for the women and the cultural people today. But no, so I think that this is, again, another really important thing to just take into account, that when you have two individuals that come together, and especially, I mean, I'm not speaking for everyone here, but I'm speaking for most people that live in London that are working, that have lives, that are doing things. And, like, you know, even you were saying earlier, you know, like, if you were to settle down with someone now, there's be a lot that you have to evaluate, what you'd have to let go of in terms of activities, because you're involved in a lot of different things. Yeah. And that time would have to, you know, not have to, but you'd want to make time.
Yeah, you have to create the time for somebody.
So, yeah, so then with that in mind, it's important that people recognize that this is, number one, the basis of where they're beginning. Yeah. That they're not going to somehow magically make things, like, you know, oh, perfect. But instead, it's like a merger. Yeah, it's like a company. We're going back to business.
Yeah, back to business. Everything's business.
It's a company merger. So I think, you know, similar to what you were saying before, with having a defined time.
Yeah, having sorry, I'm going to steal your thunder.
Go for it.
It's like creating a schedule where, like, you know, you're booking in that time with them first, like in your week. Like, you say, okay, I used to do this with gym. Gym used to be the thing that was unmovable in my diary. That time would not move. Gym time was in the diary on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And
I mean, Jim was a nice guy, so
yeah, I like Jim. And I feel sorry for my poor girlfriend at the time then, because trying to spend time with me was difficult, because I went to gym 3 times a week, I played football twice a week, and I used to hang out with my friends. So it's like she got the last time of what was left over that, right? So, but in your relationship, put that time in first, like, or maybe have a recurring day or whatever, the way you do things together, and that makes life a lot easier. And then the other thing, which we have to thank one of our good friends for, actually, is a shared diary. And, like, I would say that this made a huge difference in my past relationship, where, again, it just removed another layer of arguments. Was, you know, we just had a shared diary, so everything I put in my diary, equally when she could see in her diary. And it just meant that, you know, when I put something in the diary for 3 weeks in the future, I didn't have to always have a big conversation about, oh, so I'm doing this thing, blah, blah, blah. Because she could see it in her diary as well, right? And if you get really sophisticated, if there's things you need to do together, you can just invite them to the thing in the diary entry, and it becomes quite a sophisticated thing to do. And my other point on this, I might just talk and finish talking. The other point is start involving that person in things in your life. There's going to be things that you're doing that you could bring your partner in and involve them in, so they feel more part of your life. Because it's not always just time together. It's sometimes feeling like you're not part of their life. You're just this external piece of their life. Like there may be certain social events that you go to that you could bring your girlfriend to, or there may be certain activities you could, go into the gym, for instance, or you go to CrossFit, or I don't know what it may be, but you could bring her along with you or introduce her to them, and that way you feel like you are more part of each other's life, but yet still have your own things you're doing.
I mean, I don't really have much else to add to that one. I think the sex one was a much bigger topic. But on what else can I say really in regards to it? It's like, I think you covered all the points.
Yeah, I've really dealt with that one before a lot, and those have been the most important things to kind of add to that. It's like I think the best two are probably the scheduling and the shared diary. Those ones really made a huge difference to me.
And as always, if we haven't mentioned it already, communication. Yeah,
fucking communication. Basically, we should have called this episode "Fucking Get Your Communication Together," because really, it's all communication, right? Of all the points, we'll just recap on them. It's like the first one is around arguments and miscommunication issues. The second point is about the differences between men and women. The third point is about alignment of life and relationship goals and values, and money values in particular. The fourth point is around passion and sex and attraction. And the last point is about time, spending time together. But what we see really at the heart of all of these is a level of communicating like what it is you want, how you want things to be, and from both sides. And then communicating in that as well as listening to the other person and what their wants and desires are.
Cool.
That was a big old recap. Yeah. So I think that's it for today. Other than, tell you where you can get in contact with us. Actually, should we give a little exercise?
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, so I guess that some of the pointers we gave you, if you're in a relationship and you're listening to this, I think the best one to try actually would be the process we went through, the conflict with integrity. That is something we'd love to hear how that went for you. Go try that out with your partner, or even try it at work, because it's a really valuable thing to do when you've got some sort of conflict or annoyance or something comes up that angers you, is just do that. Like with yourself, go away with a piece of pen and paper and kind of go through those points. And we'd love to hear that, how it felt for you and what the kind of outcome was that was different to what it would normally be for you.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think if there's anyone who was intrigued by that process and would like us to help them with it, then do get in touch and we can figure something out.
Yeah, we'd probably do something in what would be great if we could do like an IG live or something. But yeah.
Well, probably more personal than that.
But well, Skype call.
But cool. All right, guys. Thanks
for having me. Bye-bye.